Sometimes, nature doesn't take people. It keeps them. And when it does, it keeps the silence, too. This is the story of a man named Daniel Pierce and his little 2-year-old daughter, Maya, a child so small you could carry her on your back, a child who loved butterflies and who never learned the meaning of fear. It's a story about love, loss, and the strange silence of the Smoky Mountains, where Daniel and Maya vanished during a quiet weekend trip, and where, 8 years later, hikers stumbled upon something that brought the mystery full circle. Before we go into this heartbreaking story, please take a second to support the channel. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next true story. Your support helps us keep these real, unsolved mysteries alive, stories that deserve to be remembered, not forgotten. Daniel Pierce was the kind of man people liked instantly. He worked quietly as a mechanical engineer in Knoxville, Tennessee. Steady job, steady hands, quiet heart. He wasn't one to draw attention to himself, but those who knew him said there was something about the way he carried himself, gentle, almost cautious, like a man who'd learned not to take peace for granted. He met his wife, Rebecca, when they were both 19. She was studying nursing. He was an engineering student who'd come to fix the hospital's computer lab printer one afternoon. By the end of that day, he'd printed out his first ever love letter. They married young, and by their late 20s, had built a modest, happy home. When Maya was born, Daniel said it was the first time he understood what it meant to love someone more than yourself. He would hold her close and whisper, "You're my sunshine. You'll always be my sunshine." But life isn't always kind to people who love deeply. It was a rainy night in October 2015. Rebecca was driving home from a late shift at the hospital when an oncoming truck hydroplaned on the wet asphalt. The crash was fatal. She never made it home. Daniel was left with an 11-month-old baby and a heart that didn't know how to beat anymore. For months, he moved through life like a ghost. He'd still cook breakfast, pack Maya's diaper bag, feed her, rock her to sleep, but his eyes carried a faraway pain. He once told his sister, Angela, "Sometimes I wake up reaching for her side of the bed, and it feels like the air's been punched out of me." But even through the grief, one thing remained constant: Maya. She became his reason for breathing, the one pure thing that kept him from falling apart. Every night, he sang to her the same lullaby Rebecca used to sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." And sometimes, as she drifted off to sleep, he'd feel that maybe, just maybe, Rebecca was still there in some way, watching over them both. By the time Maya turned 2, Daniel began to smile again. Not the kind of smile people give out of politeness, but the kind that comes from remembering love instead of loss. He started taking her on small weekend trips, the zoo, the lake, and once, a picnic at a forest reserve near Gatlinburg. She was fascinated by birds. "Birdie!" she'd shout, pointing at every wing that moved. Angela once said to him, "You're finally coming back to life." He nodded and said, "Yeah, I think I just needed time to listen to the quiet." So when the second anniversary of Rebecca's death approached in October 2017, Daniel told Angela, "I'm going to take Maya camping. Just a short trip. Somewhere peaceful. She's old enough now to enjoy it. I want to show her what her mom loved, the mountains." Angela hesitated. She'd grown up near the Smokies and knew how unpredictable they could be. Sudden fog, deep trails, wild terrain. But Daniel was determined. "She'll be fine," he said softly. "We'll be fine. Just a father and his little girl, out under the stars." Friday, October 20th, 2017. Morning skies over Knoxville were clear, crisp autumn air, golden leaves drifting across the streets. Daniel packed their small silver Toyota Tacoma carefully. Tent, sleeping bags, diapers, baby snacks, and Maya's favorite stuffed unicorn, the one she called Nunu. He double-checked everything, strapped Maya into her car seat, kissed her forehead, and said, "Ready, sunshine? Let's go find the sky." Neighbors later remembered seeing him drive off with the windows down and children's music playing faintly. It was around 9:30 a.m. He sent one last text to Angela. "Headed out now. Should have signal once we get closer to the park. Love you." She replied, "Be safe. Text me when you get there." That message would never be read. The drive from Knoxville to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is a little over 2 hours. Daniel stopped once at a small roadside diner near Townsend. The waitress, a woman named Kathy Henson, later told police he seemed quiet but kind. She remembered Maya clearly, curly brown hair, tiny hands slapping the table, smiling up at her father. Daniel had ordered pancakes and coffee. Maya had a small bowl of fruit. Kathy said, "You could tell she was his whole world." He barely looked away from her. After breakfast, Daniel bought a small disposable Kodak camera from the counter, saying he wanted to capture a few memories. He even took a picture outside the diner, one that would later be found in that same camera, undeveloped, 8 years later. By early afternoon, they entered the park through the Klingman's Dome Road entrance. The sun was soft and low, mist crawling lazily across the treetops. Other hikers remembered seeing them at the Forney Ridge trailhead, Daniel carrying Maya in a back carrier, softly humming, "You Are My Sunshine." She waved at a couple as they passed, clutching her unicorn tightly. That was the last confirmed sighting of either of them. Somewhere between the trailhead and the ridge, Daniel and Maya vanished, leaving behind no footprints, no broken branches, no sign of where they went. Just the mountains and the silence. By late afternoon, the light in the Smokies was shifting from gold to gray. Daniel parked the Tacoma at the small gravel lot near Forney Ridge. He unloaded their gear, a one-person tent, a tiny sleeping bag for Maya, a cooler, and a blue baby carrier with fading straps. Several hikers saw them heading down a gentle path that curved toward Forney Creek. One, an older man named George Laird, later told rangers. He looked prepared. Carried the little one like it was the most natural thing in the world. They chose a small clearing near the creek where the water murmured over rocks. Daniel set up camp, built a modest fire, and cooked instant noodles while Maya babbled beside him, trying to feed bits of noodle to her stuffed unicorn. He took several pictures with a disposable camera. The creek, the trees, Maya laughing with a noodle hanging from her lip. Those undeveloped pictures would one day become the last images of them alive. When darkness fell, the forest filled with crickets and distant owls. Daniel zipped up the tent and read from a tiny children's book, "Good Night, Moon." Maya's eyes drooped halfway through, thumb in mouth. He whispered, "We're okay, sunshine. Mommy would love this place." Then he pressed a small photograph of Rebecca, folded and faded, against the inside of the tent and closed his eyes. Sometime after midnight, wind rolled through the trees, heavy with mist. Weather reports later showed an unexpected front passing over the mountains, not violent, but enough to bring fog thick as milk. In the distance, a tree cracked and fell. Maya stirred and began to cry. Daniel unzipped the tent halfway and held her close, whispering, "It's just the wind, baby. Daddy's here." But by dawn, the fog refused to lift. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. Trails disappeared into white. At 8:12 a.m., a hiker named Samantha Eves passed through the parking lot and noticed Daniel's truck still there. Windows misted, locked, a baby seat in the back. She thought little of it. Many campers left vehicles for days. Around that same time, Daniel's sister Angela texted, "Morning. You guys awake yet? How's the view?" No reply. By noon, fog thickened again. Rangers would later conclude that if Daniel had decided to hike deeper or relocate camp, he might have easily lost orientation. The Smokies are notorious for disappearing trails, paths that split into game tracks and end at cliffs or ravines. If you take even 20 wrong steps, you can vanish from sight and never be seen again. When Sunday evening came and Daniel still hadn't returned or texted, Angela called the ranger station. Her voice trembled. My brother was camping with his daughter. He was supposed to be back today. Please, can someone check? By 7 p.m., a search alert was issued. Rangers reached the Forney Ridge trailhead and found the silver Tacoma exactly where Samantha had seen it the day before. Inside were the keys, a small blanket, and 2 half-empty water bottles. The passenger door still smelled faintly of baby lotion. Nighttime temperatures dropped into the low 40s. Search teams fanned out with headlamps and thermal drones. Dogs traced faint scent lines that vanished near the creek. By dawn, more than 60 volunteers had joined the effort, locals, hikers, and even a few off-duty firefighters. Helicopters hovered overhead, sweeping lights through fog. But the Smokies can be cruel. The dense canopy confuses thermal sensors, ravines swallow sound. Search dogs lose trails where air currents twist. A ranger named Caleb Redding later recalled, "We could hear the creek the whole time, but never each other. You yell a name out there and the forest just eats it." On the second day, searchers discovered a small pink sock tangled on a branch about 2 miles downstream from the presumed campsite. Forensics couldn't confirm DNA. It had been too long exposed to water. Nearby, a plastic sippy cup lay half-buried in mud. Daniel's fingerprints were on it, but nothing else. Despite hundreds of man-hours, no tracks, no tent remnants, and no signs of struggle were found. It was as if father and daughter had stepped into mist and dissolved. By the end of the week, news vans lined the park entrance. Headlines read, "Father and toddler missing in Smokies." Search intensifies for Daniel Pierce and 2-year-old daughter. Locals flooded social media with prayers and theories. Some swore the area was cursed. Others suggested wild animals, sinkholes, even human foul play. Angela faced cameras with trembling hands, holding up a photo of Daniel and Maya. "My brother loved that child. He would never leave her. Please, if anyone sees anything." Her voice broke before she could finish. When searches yielded nothing after 2 weeks, the official operation scaled back. The case passed from emergency rescue to long-term missing persons. Theories grew darker. 1. Accidental fall. Rangers believed Daniel may have slipped on wet rock while carrying Maya, both tumbling into a hidden ravine. The Smokies contain hundreds of fissures too narrow for human entry. 2. Animal attack. Some speculated black bears or coyotes, but experts argued remains or torn clothing would have surfaced within days. 3. Voluntary disappearance. A few online threads suggested Daniel, depressed from Rebecca's death, may have chosen to vanish with Maya, but no evidence supported it. His bank accounts remained untouched. Angela refused to believe he was gone. She returned to the park month after month, sometimes alone, sometimes with volunteers. Each visit she placed flowers near the trailhead and whispered, "I'm not leaving you here." Once, during a fog-soaked afternoon, she claimed to have heard a faint child's laugh echo from the trees. She ran toward it, screaming Maya's name, only to find empty air. Years passed. Seasons turned the same trails over and over, green to orange to white to green again. Daniel and Maya remained 2 names on a board of unresolved disappearances. 8 years would come and go before the Smokies finally exhaled the truth. The official search for Daniel and Maya Pierce was suspended on November 3 RD, 2017, 14 days after it began. Rangers made the announcement in a crowded briefing tent while mist collected on their jackets. Angela stood in the back, clutching one of Maya's baby shoes that had been kept in the evidence bag. When the ranger said the words, "Search discontinued," she whispered, "he wouldn't just stop breathing. He'd fight." The press filmed her tears, but when reporters tried to ask questions, she walked away into the fog. In the weeks that followed, candlelight vigils were held across Knoxville. Dozens of parents arrived with their own toddlers bundled in blankets. People left flowers, toys, and handwritten notes beneath a large photo of Daniel and Maya outside City Hall. A neighbor, Mrs. Lucille Grant, recalled, "He used to fix my porch light. He never complained, never charged me a dime. That little girl was his heartbeat." Donations poured in to support ongoing private searches. Angela used every penny to hire independent trackers, drone specialists, and divers. None of them found a trace. Winter came. Then another spring. Then another. By 2018, the story had faded from nightly news, replaced by newer tragedies. But not from Angela's life. She still set 2 plates on Thanksgiving, one with pancakes and fruit, for Danny and Maya. Every October she drove back to Forney Ridge. She would stand by the trailhead with a thermos of coffee and whisper into the mist, "Show me something. Anything." She never received an answer, only the sighing of trees. Daniel's small suburban home remained untouched. Angela couldn't bring herself to sell it. The grass grew tall. The mailbox overflowed. Inside, dust coated everything except Maya's room. Angela cleaned that every month, placing a fresh stuffed toy on the pillow. The walls were still painted sky blue, and a mobile of stars hung over the crib. Sometimes she'd sit there in silence, listening, half believing she could still hear the faint hum of "You Are My Sunshine." By 2021, the case had become a minor legend on true crime forums. Users analyzed satellite maps, speculated on off-trail routes, even compared it to other Smoky Mountain disappearances. One thread gained traction after a user posted, "There's a fissure north of Andrews Bald that was never searched. Locals call it the Whisper Slot. You could fall in and never be found." No one followed up. It was just another theory lost in the digital noise. Redding, the ranger who'd led part of the first search, retired in 2023. In his final interview he said, "That one never left me. I still dream about the fog, how it moved like a living thing. We were calling Daniel's name, and I swear I heard a child answer. But maybe it was the wind." He paused, looking away from the camera. The Smokies don't always keep people. Sometimes they keep moments. By 2025, Angela had grown tired of waiting, tired of hoping. But that October she decided to visit one last time, placing a small wooden cross by the same tree where she had left flowers every year. She whispered, "If you're still out there, please let someone find you." Her words floated into the mist and were gone. 8 years had passed. The mountains had been silent the entire time. Then, in early spring 2025, they finally spoke. April 6, 2025, a warm Saturday. 3 hikers, Jordan Miller, Samantha Price, and Leo Collins, were exploring a remote ridge about 6 miles south of Andrews Bald. It was an area so rarely visited that even rangers warned, "Stay on the main path. The rocks shift under your feet." At about 3 p.m., Jordan stopped to tie his boot and noticed something glinting beneath moss between 2 large boulders. He thought it was litter. But when he tugged, the object resisted, wedged tightly. He called to the others. Together they pried loose a weather-stained backpack, the fabric brittle from years of exposure. The air carried a faint metallic scent, rust and earth. Inside the pack were 3 items: a small pink shoe, faded and stiff, a stuffed unicorn, one ear torn, and a plastic photo sleeve holding a picture of a man and a toddler smiling beside a silver pickup truck. Jordan froze. He recognized the faces, from old missing person posters still tacked on ranger boards. They radioed for help. Within hours, rangers and forensic technicians arrived. Among them was Lieutenant Karen Mills, who had been a junior officer during the original search 8 years earlier. She later said, "When I saw that unicorn, I couldn't breathe. We'd all hoped for this, and dreaded it too." A perimeter was established. Beneath the boulders, about 6 feet down, partial skeletal remains were visible. Fragments of bone intertwined with rotted fabric and metal buckles from a baby carrier. The area was carefully excavated over 3 days. DNA tests later confirmed the remains were those of Daniel Pierce and Maya Pierce. The coroner's report concluded they had likely fallen through a concealed gap between rocks, roughly 12 feet deep, and been pinned by shifting stone. The terrain's geometry explained why aerial scans in 2017 had shown nothing. Thermal cameras couldn't detect through stone. Daniel's wrist bones showed signs of fracture consistent with shielding someone during a fall. The baby carrier straps were still locked across what had been his chest. When Angela received the call, she didn't speak. She simply sat down on the kitchen floor, clutching the phone, tears rolling silently. Later she said, "He kept his promise. He never let her go." Daniel and Maya's remains were escorted down from the ridge under overcast skies. The recovery team moved in silence, the sound of their boots against gravel echoing like a heartbeat. Angela met them at the ranger station. The officer approached her quietly, holding a sealed evidence bag that contained the pink shoe. He didn't speak. He just handed it over. Angela pressed it to her chest, whispering, "I found you, baby. I found you both." That night she stayed near the park lodge, unable to leave. She sat on the porch staring into the black silhouette of the mountains. Mist drifted between the trees like smoke, glowing faintly under the moon. "It's strange," she said later in an interview. "Even after all the pain, the Smokies still felt like home. Like they had been guarding them until I was ready." The official report was finalized on May 12, 2025. It concluded that heavy fog and disorientation likely caused Daniel to veer off the main loop of Andrews Bald Trail. Reduced visibility concealed a narrow crevice formed by erosion. Daniel slipped and fell, shielding Maya during impact. A rockslide the following week sealed the opening. The case was formally closed, ruled an accident, but for those who had searched, the closure carried weight beyond words. Lieutenant Mills later told local press, "For 8 years I carried their faces in my head. Now I can finally tell myself, we brought them home." News outlets across Tennessee picked up the story immediately. Headlines read, "Remains of father and toddler found in Smoky Mountains after 8 years." Social media erupted with messages of heartbreak and reverence. Some users wrote poems, others posted drawings of Daniel holding Maya beneath a halo of mountain mist. True crime channels revisited the case, this time focusing on the father's courage, how he died protecting the little girl he loved most. A public memorial was held 2 months later in Knoxville's Riverside Park. Hundreds attended, including several of the original search and rescue volunteers. Angela stood at the podium holding the photo of Daniel and Maya, the same one found inside the backpack. Her voice trembled but stayed clear. "People think time heals everything. It doesn't. Time only teaches you how to carry the hurt differently. But I know one thing, Daniel didn't die lost. He died holding our daughter, keeping her safe until the mountains could tell me where they were. As she stepped down, the crowd sang softly, "You are my sunshine." The same lullaby Daniel used to hum to Maya. Candles flickered in the dusk. Fireflies floated over the river. For the first time in years, Angela smiled through her tears. 2 weeks later, Angela returned alone to the site where they'd been found. Rangers had placed a small brass plaque nearby, in memory of Daniel and Maya Pierce. Lost October 2017, found April 2025. He never let her go. She set down a small bouquet of wildflowers and sat quietly for a long time. Then, with trembling hands, she lifted her phone and recorded a short message for her followers, the same one later used at the end of your channel's upload. If you ever visit the Smokies, take a moment to look into the fog. Somewhere in that mist, a father still walks with his little girl. Not lost, just home. She looked up into the trees. The wind carried a faint echo that almost sounded like laughter, a child's giggle fading into the forest. The Smoky Mountains have seen countless stories of wonder, tragedy, and mystery. But this one reminds us of something timeless. A parent's love doesn't fade, not even against the wild silence of nature. Daniel Pierce wasn't a hero by design. He was a man who carried his child through fog and fear. He fell, but in falling, he kept his promise to protect her always. And when hikers found those clues wedged in stone 8 years later, the world was reminded that the mountains never truly forget. They hold the ones who loved deeply until the time is right to let them go. Thank you for watching this story. If you believe their memory deserves to be heard, please help keep this channel alive by liking this video, leaving your thoughts below, and subscribing so you never miss the next story of loss, courage, and the mysteries that still linger among us. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and never stop listening to what the silence might be trying to tell you.